many centuries, Turkey, rich in tradition, has served as the bridge between two continents. Lying partly in Europe and partly in Asia, Turkey has long been a meeting place for the cultures of the Eastern and Western worlds. Its history is closely linked with the rise and fall of many civilizations and empires. Most important city in Turkey is called Istanbul, which, as Constantinople, was the capital of the Roman Empire in the East in the early Christian era. Its ancient mosques are no longer filled with worshippers, since Mohammedanism was discarded as a state religion. But they remain symbols of the great Ottoman Empire, which at its height embraced under the Muslim faith most of Asia Minor and North Africa, and all Eastern Europe up to the gates of Vienna. Against the walls of Constantinople's ancient fortresses, countless armies have flung themselves. Barbarian hordes from the north, waves of Christian crusaders, and the conquering Ottoman Turks. Today, Turkey is a nation hopefully pursuing the paths of peace. But conditioned by centuries of war, Turkey is always on guard. For although its battered fortresses have not been besieged for many years, its people well know that Turkey's geographical position is such that they may live to see the invasion of their country's soil again. Through centuries of greatness and glory long dead, through centuries of decadence and poverty, Istanbul has retained its prime strategic importance as the link between two great continents. Today, over the streets of Istanbul, power politics hangs as a dark and constant threat. For it is Turkey's misfortune that she is a weak nation, precariously situated between Europe and Asia, where the interests of strong nations converge and conflict. To the north lie the URSS and her neighboring satellites. To the south lie the oil-rich lands of the Middle East and the Suez Canal, traditional lifeline of the British Empire. Within Turkey's borders are the Dardanelles, western gateway to the narrow straits leading out of the Black Sea, and Russia's only means of access to the warm Mediterranean. Gallipoli is one of the Turkish army's fortified zones guarding the Straits of the Dardanelles, by authority of an international agreement signed in 1936. Today, for fear of losing her independence, Turkey is firmly resisting Russia's insistent demands that Soviet troops, in violation of the agreement, be allowed to help guard the Dardanelles. At the eastern end of the straits, beyond the inland sea of Marmara, lies the Bosphorus, which completes Turkish control of water traffic in and out of the Black Sea. Through this bottleneck controlled by Turkey must pass all shipping to and from Russia's most important warm water ports, a fact that has irked Russia for centuries and has made the narrow straits the cause of several wars. From ancient times, the strategic importance of the straits was recognized, but they first became an issue in modern politics during the 18th century, when Russia made a strong move toward expansion southward. 100 years later, furthering his country's ambition to become a naval power, Tsar Nicholas II intensified Russia's efforts to gain access through the straits to ice-free waters. During World War I, Russia's Black Sea fleet was effectively bottled up. Its thrust at the straits, in answer to overt acts by Turkey, was one in a chain of events which prompted Turkey to enter the war as an ally of Germany. In a historic naval battle near the Bosphorus, Turkey's warships routed the Russian force, which suffered the loss of several ships and did not again threaten the straits for the duration of the war. Following the end of World War I, the straits upon which depended access to Russia's Black Sea ports were placed under international control. But freedom of access was complete for merchant vessels, and in the 2 decades between the wars, such ports as Odessa grew and flourished. Trade with nations in both hemispheres increased, and Russia was able to bring in, through the Mediterranean and the Straits, in all seasons of the year, the machinery which she so badly needed for the country's development. In 1936, the signing of the Montreux Convention gave Turkey the right to remilitarize the Straits, thus restoring to her the control she had lost after the First World War. Throughout World War II, Turkey, protecting her neutrality, cut off all passage of warships to and from the Black Sea. Since the war, Russia has persistently sought, through every political expedient, to take joint control of the Straits with Turkey, a move which would leave Russia in effective possession. So far, these proposals have all been rejected. Turkey's position makes her today the bloc between Russia and the Middle East. And behind her thinly fortified borders, she lives under the shadow of the Colossus to the north. At garrisons strung out along the borders, from Bulgaria to the Russian Caucasus, Turkish patrols are on the alert for frontier incidents which the Soviet might use as an excuse to move against its neighbor. By such vigilance, open warfare has been so far averted, though for years there have been clashes between sentries and bands of armed men infiltrating from across the boundaries of Russia and Bulgaria. Behind these lonely patrols is the mass of the Turkish army, some 600,000 strong. Though made up of men who are warriors by tradition, the Turkish army is limited in modern equipment and could not long withstand the weight of Russia. Yet its very presence has been enough to ward off typical Russian encroachments. The army, built by Turkey's military leaders, is a severe drain on Turkey's resources, with military appropriations consuming almost half the national budget. Officers' training schools are drawing off Turkey's most promising young men, desperately needed as civilian leaders in the development of the country. Turkey feels that, second only to her military establishment, her security depends on continued friendship with the United States. In accordance with the Truman Doctrine, the United States has authorized over $100 million for military aid to Turkey. U.S. Ambassador Edwin C. Wilson, closeted with Turkey's high officials, irons out details pertaining to policies and terms connected with the United States aid program. Arrivals of official missions from the United States are sending Turkey's hopes of maintaining her independence soaring higher. For these missions offer visible proof to an anxious people that American support is a reassuring reality. And the concrete financial aid, which the American representatives are assisting Turkish officials to administer, makes the economic and military problems ahead much less critical to Turkey's government.